She waited 63 years for the love of her life to return home. In 1950, U.S. Army Sergeant Joseph Gant went missing during the Korean War, and his wife Clara was told only that he may have been taken prisoner. Refusing to give up hope, she never remarried and kept a light burning on her porch for more than 6 decades, telling everyone she was still waiting for Joe. Finally, in 2013, his remains were identified and returned to Los Angeles in a flag-draped coffin. At 94 years old, Clara stood weeping as she welcomed him home, her lifelong vigil ending in both heartbreak and closure. This was the last photo taken of 31-year-old Landre Sylvester in July of 2021, as he walked out of Cook County Jail after posting bail, unaware it would be his final steps. Just minutes after his release, multiple gunmen leaped from 2 cars and opened fire in a calculated ambush, riddling his body with up to 64 bullets in front of stunned witnesses. Police noted Sylvester's ties to local gangs, and many believe the hit was gang-related retaliation, but with no arrests ever made, the case remains officially unsolved. Here's a photo of 2 tourists posing inside the Claw of Death at Chernobyl, a massive crane used to scoop up chunks of radioactive reactor core after the 1986 meltdown. The machine is still so contaminated that standing near it can deliver radiation doses dozens of times higher than a chest X-ray, and its rusted frame is coated in radioactive dust that can cling to hair, skin, or clothing. While a brief picture likely won't cause immediate sickness, the exposure adds to long-term cancer risk, and any contamination they brought home could be far deadlier. It remains one of the most dangerously toxic relics of the exclusion zone, yet people still climb inside it for a photo op. In 2000, a Tahitian man named Fidel Maruhi pulled off one of the most unlikely survivals in aviation history. He stowed away in the wheel well of a Boeing 747 bound for Los Angeles. For 7.5 hours, he endured sub-zero temperatures and near total lack of oxygen, and when rescuers found him, his core body temperature was just 79 degrees Fahrenheit, a level usually considered fatal. But against all odds, he lived, and when asked why he'd risk such a death-defying stunt, he explained his dream was to reach France simply so he could shake hands with soccer legend Zinedine Zidane. These are the faces of 2 brothers who thought that murdering their family would make them famous. Morbid Facts, Part 727. In 2015, brothers Robert and Michael Bever turned their quiet Oklahoma home into a slaughterhouse. Armed with knives and body armor, the teens butchered their parents and 3 siblings in a planned midnight massacre, leaving only 2 sisters alive, one gravely wounded, the other just 2 years old and deliberately spared. Investigators later revealed the brothers weren't driven by family conflict, but by a twisted obsession with mass murder. They idolized the Columbine shooters, stockpiled weapons, and even kept journals outlining a plan to kill hundreds more once their family was out of the way, dreaming of becoming legends of infamy. The carnage only ended when the injured sister managed to call 911, bringing police to a scene so gruesome it was described as the stuff of nightmares. A couple years later, Robert was sentenced to life without parole, while Michael received life with a chance of parole after 38 years. Patrice O'Neal was a renowned stand-up comedian known for his sharp, unfiltered style on stage and appearances on Chappelle's Show, Opie and Anthony, and the Comedy Central roasts. He first discovered he had diabetes after a girlfriend told him his urine tasted like birthday cake, prompting him to get tested. The disease slowly wore him down over the years until in October of 2011, he suffered a massive stroke. Just a month later, at 41 years old, he died from complications, with his final television appearance being the roast of Charlie Sheen. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, the heat was so intense it didn't just kill people. It completely warped human remains in ways rarely seen throughout history. In Herculaneum, archaeologists discovered the body of a young man lying face down on a wooden bed whose brain had literally been turned into glass. What you're looking at in this photo is brain tissue that was flash heated to nearly 1,000 degrees before cooling so rapidly it vitrified, leaving behind a shiny glass-like substance. It remains one of the only known cases of a human brain preserved through such a gruesome transformation. In January of 2022, beloved comedian Bob Saget was found dead in his Orlando hotel room just hours after performing stand-up. The autopsy revealed massive skull fractures and brain bleeding, injuries more consistent with a serious car crash than a simple fall. Investigators ruled it an accident, likely from hitting his head, dismissing it as minor, and going to sleep unaware of the fatal damage. Even more tragic, just that morning, Bob had posted on Instagram about the show he'd done the night before, writing, "I'm back in comedy like I was when I was 26. I guess I'm finding my new voice and loving every moment of it." With no drugs or alcohol in his system and no signs of foul play, his sudden death at 65 left fans across the world completely stunned. In February of 2023, two notorious orcas named Port and Starboard went on a killing spree off the coast of South Africa, slaughtering at least 17 seven-gill sharks in a single day. When the shark carcasses washed ashore, researchers were stunned to find that each had been sliced open with eerie precision. Every single liver was gone, while the rest of the body was left behind. Orcas are known to favor shark livers for their high fat content, but the surgical accuracy of these attacks has cemented their reputation as the ocean's most ruthless predators. In 2007, NASA astronaut Lisa Nowak made headlines for one of the strangest scandals in space history. Obsessed with her ex-boyfriend's new partner, Lisa drove 900 miles from Houston to Orlando in a single stretch, allegedly wearing adult diapers so she wouldn't have to stop for the bathroom. In her car, police found a BB gun, a knife, pepper spray, rubber tubing, and trash bags, tools suggesting a plan to kidnap. She ambushed Colleen Shipman in an airport parking lot, spraying her with mace before being arrested. Once a respected astronaut who had flown on the Space Shuttle Discovery, Nowak became infamous as the first NASA astronaut ever fired after the bizarre meltdown. In 2009, she managed to avoid jail time, receiving a year of probation and community service. This disturbing sign was recently put up at a cemetery in Tampa Bay. In January of 2004, Texas math teacher Alejandro Navarro checked into the ER with serious heart and kidney problems, knowing he might not make it out. But instead of resting, he pulled out his laptop and started grading papers, determined to finish his students' work even as doctors prepared him for critical care. The next day, Navarro tragically passed away, and the photo his daughter shared of him bent over his computer in the hospital went viral. In 2003, wrestling legend The Iron Sheik sat in a courtroom watching the man who had murdered his beloved daughter, Marissa. Hidden inside his mouth was a razor blade. His plan was to leap across the aisle and slit the killer's throat in front of a packed courtroom. But at the last moment, his family physically surrounded him, begging him not to throw his own life away, and he broke down in their arms. The killer was sentenced to life in prison, and in the years afterward, Sheik put down the drugs and worked hard to rebuild his life as a tribute to his daughter. On his grave in Stratford-upon-Avon, William Shakespeare left a chilling warning. "Blessed be the man who spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones." Yet in 2016, ground-penetrating radar revealed a disturbing truth. The head of his grave showed signs of tampering, with a mysterious brick repair where his skull should be. The discovery gave new credence to a long-dismissed urban legend that grave robbers stole Shakespeare's skull in the late 1700s. In the early 1930s, New York high society had an unlikely new it girl, a mannequin named Cynthia. Designed by artist Lester Gaba, she was so lifelike that designers dressed her in couture. She was photographed at parties and even received fan mail like a real celebrity. For years, people treated her like she was actually alive. But in 1938, Cynthia toppled from a chair and shattered into pieces, and newspapers reported her death with obituaries as though a beloved socialite had just passed away. In the early 1980s, Minneapolis was haunted by the weepy-voiced killer, a man who routinely phoned police after his murders, sobbing and begging them to stop him. For years, his trembling voice was the only lead. That changed in 1982 when he lured sex worker Denise Williams into his car and stabbed her 15 times with a screwdriver. But Williams fought back, smashing a glass bottle over his head and escaping. Bleeding and panicked, he later called 911 for medical help, and detectives immediately recognized the same weepy voice from the anonymous murder call. He was identified as Paul Michael Stefani and sentenced to life. In November of 2021, 23-year-old Tina Tintor was driving home in Las Vegas after taking her golden retriever Max out for a late-night walk when her car was suddenly struck at more than 150 miles per hour by NFL wide receiver Henry Ruggs III, who was heavily intoxicated. The impact sent her Toyota RAV4 up in flames, trapping both Tina and Max inside as bystanders desperately tried but failed to pull them out. Both were killed in the blaze, and Ruggs, who had a BAC more than twice the legal limit, was later sentenced to prison for DUI resulting in death. In 1991, schizophrenic artist Brian Charnley began a project unlike any other. He would paint 17 self-portraits as he gradually stopped taking his medication, documenting his slow descent into psychosis. Each canvas grew more chaotic and fragmented, mirroring his unraveling mind. His final portrait, completed on the very day he took his own life in July of 1991, remains a chilling testament to both his mental illness and artistic talent. There's a surgery so incredibly bizarre that's called tooth and eye surgery, known medically as osteoodontokeratoprosthesis. It's a last resort operation for people with severe corneal blindness. Surgeons remove one of the patient's canine teeth, root and jawbone included, hollow it out, and fit it with a tiny plastic lens. The bizarre implant is first stitched underneath the skin of the cheek for months, where it swells, fuses with flesh, and even grows its own blood supply before it's transplanted into the blind eye. Surgeons describe the moment of implantation as one of the most surreal in medicine, sliding a blood-soaked tooth back out of the cheek and into the empty cornea. The body is far less likely to reject the implant if it's made from the patient's own living tissue, making a tooth the ideal durable anchor. The result is an unsettling image, a tooth visibly embedded in the white of the eye with a lens peeking through like a peephole. But it's restored vision to people thought to be permanently blind, sometimes after decades in darkness. This was the mask worn by 51-year-old Vance Luther Bolter when he posed as a police officer and ambushed Minnesota State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette at their Champlin home in June of 2025. Dressed in a tactical vest and carrying a flashlight, he knocked on their door in the middle of the night, and the moment Hoffman said, "You're not a cop," Bolter opened fire. Bullets tore through the couple in their doorway. John struck 9 times, Yvette 8, as their terrified daughter Hope hid just feet away while her mother shielded her body with her own. Somehow, both parents survived after hours of surgery, but they were left in critical condition. However, the carnage didn't stop there. Hours later, Bolter stormed into the home of Minnesota House Speaker Melissa Hortman, executing she and her husband Gary as they both slept. Investigators later uncovered that he carried a disturbing hit list, targeting Democratic politicians and abortion providers, revealing the massacre as a carefully planned campaign of political terror, one that left Minnesota shaken to its core. After retiring from the NFL in 1990, Hall of Famer Mike Webster's life unraveled into a spiral of bizarre and disturbing behavior. Once celebrated as the Iron Man of the Pittsburgh Steelers, he spent his final years homeless or sleeping in his pickup truck, suffering crushing headaches, dementia, and paranoia. Friends and family later described shocking habits, urinating in his own oven, shocking himself with a taser just to fall asleep, and gluing his decaying teeth back together. At one point, he even carried around a briefcase filled with superglue, painkillers, and duct tape, using them as makeshift tools to hold his broken body together. By the time he died of a heart attack in 2002 at just 50 years old, Webster's decline had become a cautionary tale of the hidden costs of football. When doctors examined his brain, they discovered the first confirmed case of CTE in an NFL player, proof of how the game had slowly destroyed him from the inside out. In 1978, San Francisco was left shaken when disgruntled former city supervisor Dan White snuck into City Hall through a basement window and gunned down Mayor George Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk in cold blood. At trial, prosecutors expected an easy murder conviction, but White's lawyers argued that he was deeply depressed, pointing to drastic lifestyle changes, including a diet of sugary junk food like Twinkies, as proof of his unraveling mental state. The bizarre argument, later mocked as the Twinkie defense, convinced jurors to downgrade his charges from murder to voluntary manslaughter. White was sentenced to just over 7 years, but walked free after barely serving 5. The shocking leniency sparked outrage across San Francisco, fueling the violent White Night riots and leaving the city completely haunted by the fact that the man who assassinated both its mayor and his supervisor spent less time in prison than many would serve for petty crimes. In 2010, 15-year-old Rebecca Aylward agreed to meet up with her ex-boyfriend Joshua Davies after he promised her they might get back together. What she didn't know was that Davies had been boasting for weeks about his plans to kill her, even joking with friends about what he'd receive if he followed through with it. One friend sarcastically told him he'd buy him a breakfast if he actually did it. Just before the murder, Davies allegedly texted that same friend, "Don't say anything, but you may just owe me a breakfast." On the day of their meeting, Davies lured Rebecca into the woods near Aberkenfig, South Wales, where he crushed her skull with a rock and left her body face down in the mud. Hours later, when Rebecca's mother was frantically searching for her, Davies calmly updated his Facebook status to "feeling chill." At trial, jurors heard about his chilling boasts and casual cruelty, and he was sentenced to life in prison. The friend who joked about the breakfast later admitted that he never thought Davies would actually go through with it. Best known for playing Martin Corley on Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, 36-year-old actor Tyler Chase has become the next tragic reminder of Hollywood's child star curse. Fans recently spotted him homeless in Los Angeles and Riverside, sparking a GoFundMe for food and shelter. Concerned strangers began sharing videos of him on TikTok and rallying support to help get him back on his feet.
Hello, my name is Tyler Chase, and I'm here on a Christian movement for acting.
But Tyler's own mother has since urged people not to donate, insisting that the man needs medical treatment, not money, explaining that he can't manage finances or even his medications on his own, and giving him money may only worsen his situation. The ashes you get after cremating a body aren't really ashes at all. During the burn, soft tissues and organs completely vaporize into gas, and any true ash is swept away through the chamber's exhaust. What's left are small bone fragments, which are then ground up in a machine called a cremulator to create the fine sand-like remains families keep in urns or scatter across Disney World. Despite the ride of steel roller coasters, posted rules and safety manual requiring riders to have 2 legs, Iraq War veteran Sergeant James Hackemer, who had lost both legs in combat, was still allowed to board the ride at Six Flags Darien Lake in 2011. Midway through the ride, he was violently ejected from his seat and killed instantly. In 1997, 18-year-old Natasha Cornett and 5 friends turned a road trip into one of Tennessee's darkest crimes. At a rest stop, they encountered the Lelelid family and decided that they wanted to steal their car, so they forced them into their own van at gunpoint. On a remote back road, the family was lined up in a ditch and shot execution style. The parents died instantly. Their little girl clung to life for a day before succumbing to her wounds, and the toddler somehow survived but was left blind in one eye and permanently disabled. When investigators arrived, they found the family's bloodied Bible left open in the grass and tiny children's shoes scattered at the scene, with one officer describing it as one of the most horrifying crime scenes he had ever witnessed. The killers fled in the family's van hoping to reach Mexico, but were captured within days. Cornett, who later called herself the daughter of Satan and believed that he would spare her, instead learned she was powerless, condemned to life without parole alongside her accomplices. Behind the wild persona of Tiger King's Joe Exotic was a trail of cruelty even darker than what viewers saw on Netflix. Former employees recalled how he casually shot animals that displeased him, once killing a woman's horse within minutes of her donation and laughing about it before feeding its body to his tigers. He was accused of shooting older tigers in the head to make room for new cubs, animals that drew much bigger crowds and more profit. His zoo's kitchen was piled high with expired Walmart meat, which not only fed the big cats but was allegedly also cooked into pizzas for paying customers. A mysterious fire that destroyed his studio wiped out days of footage that insiders claimed showed him brutally executing animals on camera. Even his music career was a lie. He hired musicians to record songs and then lip-synced over them in his bizarre videos. As his empire collapsed, investigators uncovered a murder-for-hire plot against his rival Carol Baskin and evidence of him killing at least 5 of his own tigers. For all the flamboyance, costumes, and chaos, the legacy Joe Exotic left behind is one of exploitation, cruelty, and death. A man who apparently turned suffering into a spectacle and ended up caged himself. On December 10, 2021, a violent tornado tore through the Rackley family's home near Caruthersville, Missouri. 9-year-old Anastine and her sisters huddled with their mother in a windowless bathroom, where their mom snapped a final photo to reassure relatives that they were all in their safe space. But moments later, the twister ripped the house apart and hurled the family into a nearby field. While Anastine's parents and sisters survived with injuries, the 9-year-old girl was tragically killed. In 1999, Texas man Herschel Rawls went into surgery to have his cancerous bladder removed, but he woke up to an absolute nightmare. Without warning, doctors had also amputated his beef bayonet, claiming that the cancer had spread and that the drastic step was necessary to save his life. But weeks later, pathology tests revealed that the penile tissue they had cut away wasn't cancerous at all. After years of anguish, Rawls sued and in 2003 reached a quiet out-of-court settlement, but was left with the grim reminder of how a single surgical decision can leave a patient permanently mutilated. During the War on Terror, U.S. interrogators turned to music as a weapon, blasting songs on endless repeat in secret detention sites. Among the most infamous tracks was Eminem's The Real Slim Shady, which detainees reported being forced to hear non-stop for up to 20 days. Former prisoners described the experience as so unbearable that men would scream, weep, and even bang their heads against the walls for hours just to escape the sound, a form of psychological torment that left no physical scars but shattered minds. In January of 2022, shoppers at a Walmart in Crockett, Texas witnessed a bizarre and disturbing encounter. A woman named Rebecca Lynette Taylor approached a mother with an infant son and casually offered her $200 $250,000 in cash to purchase the child. When the stunned mother refused and tried to leave, Rebecca allegedly followed her into the parking lot, doubling her offer to $500,000 and insisting she'd wanted to purchase the boy for a long time. Terrified, the mother contacted police and Rebecca was arrested and charged with the felony offense of sale or purchase of a child. In May of 2025, 46-year-old Christy Crampton was arrested after a disturbing in-flight altercation with a child who allegedly called her fat and Miss Piggy. The two were returning from a trip to Disney World when the situation suddenly spiraled out of control. Witnesses say Crampton began striking the boy with her fists and a water bottle, even slamming his head against the airplane window. When questioned, she told police the child had been disrespectful and had pushed her arm away before she snapped. One witness told investigators the woman wasn't correcting the child, she was abusing him. Crampton was charged with felony child abuse and released on bond, while the child's identity, relation to her, and condition were not disclosed. Before gunning down Mahatma Gandhi in 1948, his assassin Nathuram Godse had already tried to kill him twice before. In 1944, he led a group that charged Gandhi with knives during a prayer meeting, and later that year, he confronted him again wielding a dagger. Both times he was caught but released. Gandhi, committed to his philosophy of nonviolence and forgiveness, reportedly refused to press charges. That mercy would prove fatal just 4 years later when Godse finally succeeded in his third attempt, firing 3 bullets into the man who preached nothing but peace.